you would have to be separately qualified to be what they call a financial advisor. And now, obviously, there's fundamental information that I've always given to my family when they've asked for advice, etc. But
Mm.
by and large, in finance, you don't have the option to say, I would advise you to do this. Certainly in a professional capacity, if I did that,
Mm.
if I had done that, then and it went wrong, they could sue me and sue the organization.
Right.
Now, having said that, it's a bit like advice with Samaritans. You're not supposed to give somebody advice, but that's not to say you don't occasionally say, well, I can't really advise you about that. You know, you've got to
Mm.
find the answers yourself. But have you thought of doing that? So it can be phrased in such a way. And similarly with financial advice, it would depend on the amount. You said £1 million. Uh, there are people very well qualified to advise that person because it's a big amount of money as to
Mm.
what best to do with it, whether you should put some of it in a trust fund for your offspring, for your kids, whether you want to take a degree of risk so that you get a higher reward if it works, or
Mm.
whether you want it completely safe, just buy some things like premium bonds and other savings ideas. You can do it very safely. So there's a lot of options, but if someone came to me now and said, what do you think I should do? Again, if it was a member of my family, I'd talk to them about it, and I'm sure together we would come up with a plan of what we would like to do with it.
Mm.
But I wouldn't independently give someone advice if they just came to me. I mean, if you came to me and said, I've got £1 million,
Mm.
um, then I think I would say, that sounds great. What are you going to do with it? And we'd have a conversation. And I think I would direct you to a financial advisor who's in a much better position to advise you. Yeah. So
Right.
I wouldn't personally be giving advice. If it was like £100,000, which is a more realistic amount, I would suggest, buy a 50,000 premium bonds, for example, if you don't want to risk losing the money. I think
Yeah.
that's the maximum you can have in premium bonds. And other saving certificates, you can buy government stock, all sorts of things which will provide a safe return at a
Mm.
reasonable amount of interest. But again, it all depends who it is, what the amount is, and as I say, I would firstly say I'm not qualified to really advise you on that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, so, um, do you think some people are disadvantaged in life? And what would that mean for you if someone said, I've come from a disadvantaged, background or whatever because of this or that. Do you think that's realistic?
I absolutely do. I mean, I think life is so dependent on, you know, they say by dint of birth. It depends where you're born, who you are born to, which will determine much, if not all, but much of your prospects for life, for how you see success, what you think it is. Life is incredibly unfair. Um, and let's face it, I would take the initial view that living in the Western world, and yeah, we have problems, of course we do, but in this country, despite our present very real issues that are going on, we still lead a pretty good life. Very, very few people are starving or don't have shoes to put on. We are one of the richer nations, although it doesn't always feel like it.
Hmm.
So I consider that I'm. So I consider that I'm fortunate to have been born in a free country where we don't go hungry. We can buy things that we need, etc., etc. So yeah, there's the haves and the have-nots. If you're born in certain parts of the world, you know that they don't have the same chances. Sometimes, I mean, we don't talk about religion really on our
No.
podcast, do we? Or politics, and that's probably a good thing because people have different views, and we don't want to sort of lose or upset any of our listeners by
Mm.
taking a particular position. So I think it's good that we don't get into those. But if we sort of slightly brush a religious side, we all have our views, our beliefs or lack of beliefs. Um, whether we feel we're more spiritual in our approach to life. But for my part, yeah, I do have a measure of faith um, that we are here for a reason, that there is some kind of creating force. I do believe those things. And I also think when we see some of the awful things that happen, particularly to anybody, but particularly to little children,
Mm.
I think, well, if when my time comes, if I have to meet my maker, I, I will be quite angry with him, and I'll say, I'm not suggesting you let these things happen, but how could you have let that happen to that little child? I saw
Mm.
a picture of a little child on my phone a couple of days ago
Mm.
who had been basically, a very little child, it was a baby, basically tortured by these
Wow.
so-called parents, or one of them.
Yeah.
And you
Wow.
just think, how can that happen? But anyway, that's going off in a bit of a different direction. But yeah, life is potentially very unfair. And I think we just have to accept that. And that, again, could be part of the advice you give to your younger self. Enjoy the ride. It goes very quickly. You'll find life sometimes is unfair. Everybody sometimes feels unfairly treated, but enjoy it because look at the bigger picture. It's an incredible life, an incredible gift that we have to be alive.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great answer. So the next one I was gonna ask is, would you criticize anybody that says, "I believe in aliens"?
Well, no, I wouldn't. Not at all. Um, because again, I'm not sure whether that's a phrase I would use. I believe in aliens. I'm not sure it's a kind of, is it that black and white? But I would say, for my part,